Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You've heard it already in Russian. Please take your seats. We are going to start. First, probably you've heard this already, a few housekeeping remarks. So for your safety in case of fire, kindly note the emergency exits. They can be found in the atriums between C33 and 3C2, but also between 332 and 331 and near the coffee hub. Furthermore, I want to bring your attention the QR code on your badge, which you can use to link to the Telegram channel of this conference of the Astana International Financial Center. You can find more information on the agenda and speakers and so on there. So, welcome to today's session on the future of crypto regulation. My name is Jochen Biedermann. I'm the Managing Director of the World Alliance of International Financial Centers. The World Alliance is a non-profit association in Belgium, comprising currently 28 leading international financial centers across 5 continents. Astana International Financial Center is one of our founding members, and we are very proud of that. We organize a collaboration between our members, the leading financial centers, and we jointly promote the vital role of financial centers in financing the national economies. Let's move to crypto. We have seen a lot of development in crypto over the last 12 months, and not all of them were positive, unfortunately. On the other hand, we have seen a strong trend of international financial centers introducing new regulation for cryptocurrencies and welcoming crypto industry players willing to abide to those rules. I had the honor myself to serve as an AFC advisory board member on fintech before the pandemic. And I remember well all the discussion we had on draft new regulations and reviewing them. I would like to discuss this and other topics related to crypto regulation with my fellow panelists. Please allow me to introduce them briefly. First of all, and I hope we have them online on video, Rosa Maria Lastra. Rosa is a professor in banking and finance law at the Queen Mary University of London. And Zain Umar, hopefully also on video, I cannot see him right now. He's a lead for digital asset regulation at the Cambridge Center for Alternative Finance, and he's also the founder and CEO of Crypto and Fintech Consulting Limited. Then we have directly next to me on my left, Sopnendu Mohanty. He's the Chief Fintech Officer at the Monetary Authority of Singapore, the Central Bank of Singapore. Then next to him, Ben Su. He is a co-founder and CEO of Bytebit Exchange. Then further left, Amjad Kakish. He is a global money laundering reporting officer at Binance Exchange. Then we have Jesse Knudsen. He heads operation at Bitfinex Securities. And last but not least, at my very left, your very right, Asina Miao. She's the Vice President of Business Development at Big One Exchange. Many thanks for joining our discussion. So, Zain, I hope you can hear me. I would like to start with you, if you don't mind. The Cambridge Center of Alternative Finance has done a great job of researching all aspects of alternative finance. And I had the pleasure to visit the Judge Business School and the Center of Alternative Finance just a month ago to discussing their regulatory genome project. Zain, how could you describe the crypto landscape now, after all that mess around Terra Luna, Celsius, and FTX last year?
I want to start by thanking you for inviting me on the panel today. It's an honor to be able to join. Thank you and my fellow panelists. How to describe the current crypto landscape? Fractured may be the right word. From a regulatory standpoint, of course, we have a patchwork of the different regulatory regimes which currently exist around the world, which of course creates the potential for regulatory arbitrage. Aside from MiCA, perhaps, we've seen no coordinated efforts to implement some sort of standardization from a regulatory perspective. And we see some jurisdictions are following an approach of regulation by enforcement. We've all seen perhaps the recent news from the SEC. And then from a market standpoint, we've seen 70% reduction in the total market cap, a large number of very public failures, some of which you just cited now, And generally, the mood seemed to have shifted a little bit. 2 years ago, we were all hailing the institutional involvement as a mark of the increased adoption of crypto assets, which is now no longer the case. But I think it's very important to know it's not all doom and gloom. We have two fantastic, shiny new crypto regimes in Dubai and Hong Kong, which are now, I think, two of the leading crypto asset hubs in the world. And we're going to see this continue to grow with two very good fit for the future technology neutral regulatory frameworks for crypto assets. And we are seeing adoption, real adoption, and it's happening right here in Asia, in Africa, and in Middle East. Away from the investors and away from Wall Street, we see the latest Chainalysis Crypto Adoption Index that 9 of the top 10 countries are emerging and developing economies. So for me personally, this is hugely exciting. And it's in these jurisdictions where we're going to see the true potential of the distributed ledger technology and the impact which it can have on human life. So I look forward to the near future where it's the regulators of these same emerging countries who lead the way and hopefully develop regulatory regimes which are fair and proportionate and allow for innovation to thrive while risk is mitigated.
Zain, thank you very much, and also thank you for flagging Dubai and Hong Kong. Both financial centers are also member in our association, and just coming back from Hong Kong, I know the government there is doing everything to host crypto in the same way like here the Kazakh government is doing with the Astana International Financial Center. Rosa, let me move to you. And let's look maybe at Europe and the European Union. You know, they've just enacted the new MiCA regulation, the markets in crypto assets. So what is your view on Europe, on the EU and MiCA? And MiCA, can this become a kind of global standard? What do you think?
Thank you very much. And let me start by thanking the Astana Financial Services Authority, and in particular, Meldan Altiev, who was a student of mine at Queen Mary University of London, where I teach, for inviting me to contribute to this panel. So, is MiCA, the markets in crypto assets regulation, sufficient and appropriate as a regulatory framework for the crypto industry? And can MiCA become a global standard? The answer to both is yes, but with nuances. So let me start with the first question in these 3 minutes. MiCA was very recently adopted. So this regulation on the market in crypto assets was only adopted by the Council following the complex regulatory process in the EU on the 16th of May, 2023. So not even a month ago, just 3 weeks ago. And for those of you that perhaps are not familiar with how EU law operates, it is a regulation, and that means that it is binding in its entirety upon the 27 member states, and therefore allows the opportunity, once that you are authorized in a member state, to operate from that member state into other member states. But why do I say that the answer is yes, but with nuances? Because the MiCA adds credibility to the crypto industry, and I think the crypto industry is very much in need of the credibility that regulation can provide following the scandals of 2022 and some of the market movements in the last few months. MiCA regulates crypto assets, crypto asset issuers, and crypto asset service providers under a harmonized rule framework. So it covers issuers of utility tokens, asset reference tokens, and stable coins. And it also covers the service providers, such as the trading venues and the wallets where the crypto assets are held. However, MiCA does not cover NFTs, non-fungible tokens, including the digital art and collectibles, nor crypto assets representing services of physical assets that are unique and non-fungible, such as product guarantees or real estate, and it does not cover either decentralized finance. MiCA differentiates between security tokens which must follow existing financial regulation in the EU, such as MiFID, and non-security tokens, which are governed by this new piece of regulation, MiCA. So if one is a lawyer, one needs to be careful to understand, if you're advising a client, or if you want to establish yourself as a crypto provider in a member state of the European Union, what is covered and what is not. MiCA does not apply either to CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. Therefore, digital assets issued by the central bank acting in their monetary capacity, including central bank money in digital form, but also other crypto assets issued by public authorities, including regional and local administration, or not subject to the Union framework for crypto assets, nor services related by such central banks when acting in their monetary authority. And I have to say that separate to the issue of crypto assets that you asked me, both in the EU as well as in the UK, where I teach and live, there are advanced proposals to introduce both a digital pound and a digital euro, which obviously can be a game changer. And perhaps if there is time, we can talk about it later on. So that was with regard to the first question. Well, and just to perhaps add that the EU authorities had a wonderful opportunity to create a more uniform regulatory framework for crypto assets. So by having left aside some things, it's also a bit of a missed opportunity. Can MiCA become a global standard and trigger regulatory movements worldwide? The answer is yes. And as the previous speaker has said, there is regulation which adds credibility to the industry, as long as it provides for investor protection, transparency, and coverage for financial stability in other jurisdictions. Of course, MiCA is very relevant because it's a very large platform for operators, the 27 member states of the European Union. So yes, it can become a global standard. However, I would like to emphasize that coordination between authorities will be required between the EU authorities and other authorities around the world to avoid, the point that has already been mentioned of regulatory arbitrage and a race to the bottom. But perhaps to end on a positive note on MiCA, regulation is, in my opinion, a precondition for the crypto asset markets to gain or regain credibility. So in that respect, MiCA should certainly be welcome. And for those of you that are interested, I'm currently writing a book on MiCA with another professor, Filippo Annunziata, which will be published sometime in 2025 by Oxford University Press. So yes, I do believe in the regulation of the crypto industry. I think from the perspective of the industry, it will add credibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rosa. I agree. Maybe MiCA in the current form addresses, let's say, the high-risk areas, or what was perceived as high risk from the EU authorities, and what was not regulated elsewhere. You have mentioned MiFID, for instance. But knowing the EU regulatory process, it's just a starting point, right? So if you think of MiFID, it's already the second version. The third version is under discussion. Maybe we'll also soon see MiCA 2 and MiCA 3, and maybe more to come, also covering other tokens like NFTs, which you have rightly mentioned. Sopnendo, let me come to you. The Monetary Authority of Singapore is one of the regulators worldwide that has responded early to fintech. And Singapore, of course, is a renowned global hub for fintech. We all know your splendid Singapore Fintech Festival every year. So from your point of view, what were the key lessons and takeaways from the market turmoil last year in crypto? And what do you think about MiCA, what's happening in the EU, and what is Singapore doing or planning?
Sure, thanks. So let me try to make all this regulation in a simple stack, because technology people understand stack better. If you look at all the regulations today we have, which came out of all the mishaps we had over the last 3 years, for any crypto companies out here, they got to look at regulatory structures in a 5-layer stack. The first is know your customer. I think that's something every crypto firm must think very carefully. What kind of customer, how they're onboarding those customers, what kind of disclosure they're having. The whole mis-selling was a big part of the problem. The second layer is once you have the customer, they're transacting on your platform. Money laundering, terrorism financing. According to a latest report, FATF, almost 80% of entities don't comply to FATF rules in terms of jurisdiction. So we have a serious problem there. The whole AML, terrorism financing layer. Then comes the third layer, which is market conduct. People who participate, the founders, the owners of the fintech company must demonstrate good market conduct. And we see that the names you took are a great example of pure market conduct. Then comes the fourth layer, which is the market infrastructure integrity. How to ensure the market integrity is preserved, there is no manipulation of the system. We saw a lot of examples around assets are commingled with owners having a very wrong structured access to the consumers' assets, and we saw a lot of market participant collapsing. Then comes the fifth layer, is the tech risk, which is very new. Typically, financial sector don't deal with risk at that intensity, but this is a crypto. This is designed to use technology as a core design. There's a tech risk layer, and that we have seen also significant bad collapse, cybersecurity issues happening in this particular layer. So this is a 5 tech stack, I will say regulatory stack, which we learned over 3 years, that any crypto company must think whether they're complying to this 5 tech regulatory stack. And if they don't comply, I think they don't need to operate in this space, because this is a very responsible space. It involves consumers' money. We can't take them for granted. And crypto companies' founders, largely over the last 5 years, have demonstrated very poor understanding of this layer. So that's one learning, that we have a very compact regulatory stack against which we make the crypto companies now start behaving with those expectations. In terms of market reality today, are the investors interested in crypto companies? Definitely not anymore. Almost 80% of global investment in crypto investment is down against the previous high. So it is important for the industry to bring back that confidence again to the market so that you see further investment flow to the sector. We can't go away from the reality that a $3 trillion market is now down to $1 trillion. Who are the people who lost money? Ordinary retail investors. $2 trillion money was lost. So the ecosystem have a responsibility not to repeat such disaster. We can be very glamorous, we can be very optimistic, we can get so gung-ho about how good we are. We lost $2 trillion of consumers' money. We just can't avoid that reality. Third, the other reality is that, and this is more an optimistic view, regulators are not dumping crypto industry like that. MiCA has come up, FS is putting together a clarity on the regulations, MA is also putting a public consultation on the whole space. I would say HKMA was cited. They're also putting regulations in terms of regulatory clarity. That clearly says that the regulators are giving the industry a path to succeed. Because we also believe that this particular industry has certain role to play, especially on the financial inclusion market, where the cost of financial services need to be low, and this industry can play a real role there. What has happened to the industry, they have created a speculative market, almost promising reach a faster path to huge wealth creation in the most dubious way. And many times you see crypto founders showing up in a big poster with flashy style, saying that come and invest and you make overnight rich. So you've got to get rid of that whole speculation part of this whole industry and start building a real use case. So the last point where the industry is now pivoting, which is actually very good news, industry is pivoting to market infrastructure opportunities. How to improve the market infrastructure using tokenized version of money, the DLT infrastructure, smart contracts. Industry is shifting to institutional side, which is also a very good trend, because that allows a much more strengthened argument that industry is building real market infrastructure as you move forward. So these are the two trends which we see going forward, coming up as a positive sign. But let me remind this industry, you cannot allow very optimistic, glamorous view about yourself at the expense of consumer. This industry made ordinary people lose $2 trillion of capital. Investors have lost money, and there are many bad actors out there who are out yet to be bought into the books. And SEC just put together a whole set of their response to the market. We just can't ignore that. And together as an industry, we got to be more responsible than we are today.
If you don't mind, allow me a pre-follow-up question looking at this third layer of the stack you've mentioned. And in my former life, I was a stock market official. Yeah. And of course, in the stock market, we have very tough rules against market manipulation.
Yes.
What is your personal opinion? We will also see such rules in the crypto market soon?
Yeah, absolutely, because I think a lot of the regulatory, including MAS, are actually focusing on creating the necessary regulatory obligations on the market conduct and market integrity, especially custody services, then the responsibility or competence of the people who are governing this infrastructure. So a lot of this response, to your point, we got to focus on the market side, not on the consumer side. Of course, today regulators, in absence of the market infrastructure regulation, what they've responded, they put more friction. They're putting more friction on consumer buying this asset class, because they know the consumers are not fully literate and aware of the risk they're taking. So this friction can go down if regulators have a strong view and a strong regulatory framework for the market side of the industry.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this is probably enough food for thought for the industry players next to you, Swapnendo. Asina, Ben, Amjad, Jesse, I'm curious to hear your opinions on MiCA, the approach of MAS, other regulatory initiatives, also what's going on here at Astana International Financial Centers. So what is your opinion on all that topic? Asina, do you want to start? Ladies first.
Sorry. All right. First of all, I would like to thank the opportunity from AFSA and AIFC for inviting me to be a speaker panel here. I think I can give quite a good summary for what Mr. Mohanty has said earlier on the regulation in MAS, being a Singaporean myself. So coming from a very traditional finance background in the banking sector, it was also during the time where crypto was actually booming. And it was a period where, all my banking friends or my friends my colleagues, in the stocks securities exchange, everyone was basically playing crypto. And I think the most scary part, because working in a bank, we know how important KYC is. And I frequently hear my friends saying like, hey, I'm playing this crypto coin, Dogecoin, Shiba coin. And my friends with zero financial knowledge, they absolutely had no idea what they were playing. So at the point of time, to be honest, I was still more skeptical about crypto, and it was still the early phase of crypto in Singapore. Then it came the 3AC crisis, the 3 arrows crisis, where it not only brought down the investors' money, it also brought down Celsius altogether. So it just went down in shambles, and I would say that it hit Singapore crypto market pretty hard. But I'm actually very proud as a Singaporean to say that, there's actually a lot of confidence, especially in MAS, a lot of confidence in the Singapore government that I feel protected as a citizen. So a lot of rules and regulations came very swiftly afterwards, and actually put regulations in place. They found out what was the problem with 3AC, and they made sure that in future, such things won't happen again. And coming in as a crypto exchange to Kazakhstan, I'm actually hoping that by adhering closely to the regulations implemented by AFSA, we can actually offer that same sense of security to Kazakhstan citizens that were actually maybe trading crypto for the very first time. So right now, about MiCA, is very, I would say, very heartening to actually have a more globalized standard. This conversation about crypto regulation actually has been going on since about the second half of last year. So basically every crypto conference that I attended, there was at least one panel discussion about regulation. And this is something like a new wave of regulation in crypto, that this brand new topic that suddenly it was all a buzz and everyone was talking about it. And it definitely needs some time for people to actually get used to the idea of regulation, because you have to understand that crypto first came about, in Satoshi's white paper as an unregulated concept. And now we need to change together with the times. Crypto might have came as a financial product that is not supposed, I would say the initial intent of crypto is that it's not supposed to be regulated. But the problem with such things, I think, the problem with this, as I think everyone can clearly see, is that people tend to take advantage. In a trustless environment, there will still be places for people to take advantage. And right now, I would say I have actually had quite a bit of discussions with, my CEO, my team. I would say they are more of friendly discussions, because maybe on certain things we don't always seem eye to eye. I'm more of a regulation person, and my team from China, they are more on the technical side. They are more used to the old way of doing things. So I would say that crypto is now in that phase where we are transitioning. Last year was just the start of the idea of regulation. Everyone was talking about it. And now that we are in that transition phase, where when you sign up for an account on an exchange, it doesn't take like 1 minute anymore. It might be maybe a half-hour process. We have to fill out some forms, do proper KYC. And it's actually that process that makes our investors feel safe and makes the regulators feel safe as well. So yes, I'm actually looking very much forward to a more regulated crypto industry to rebuild back that confidence that all the collapse of the institutions have actually lost.
Sina, thank you very much. After we heard the other three panelists commenting on this, I will open the floor for first question. So if you have a burning question, you have a few more minutes to think about this, and then you can raise it directly thereafter. Jesse, we had a discussion very briefly before, and I said something like, why the crypto exchanges always go to these kind of offshore places, right? So, and will they come back, to the more traditional financial centers where all this new regulation is enacted, right? So, what is your position to the regulations first, but also, the places where crypto exchanges are right now, and whether they will move back to the major financial centers?
Great, thanks a lot. It's great to be here. This is actually my second Astana Finance Day, so I'm a bit of a veteran now. My third trip to Kazakhstan in the last 12 months, so it's great to be back, and it's really excited to have an opportunity to speak on this panel. So maybe to provide a bit of context, I think Bitfinex Securities, while our pedigree and our background is very much rooted in Bitcoin and digital assets, our day-to-day business is focused on securities tokenization, right? So the tokenization of regulated products, like equity, like funds, like debt. We're one of a very small handful of companies globally that's licensed and regulated to do STO issuances, and maybe even the only one, or a small group anyway, a much smaller group of ones that are licensed to do that in more than one jurisdiction. So we've been in the AIFC for a while. We're actually the first global platform to be registered here. And we've also recently been licensed under El Salvador's new digital asset regime. So, the AIFC, El Salvador, these are places maybe that you wouldn't consider traditional kind of financial centers. I do want to point out that I think that, we kind of hinted on some things like commercially viable regulatory oversight, right, and tax considerations. So these are things that are, significant variables to any company in any industry. So the fact that the industry would look at that, I don't think that's necessarily something nefarious or negative. That's something that happens across companies and across industries. But there certainly is a push and a pull dynamic that's playing out. So last year when I was here, I highlighted the opportunity for security tokens, which I think is massive, right? And I think over the last 12 months, that view has kind of become, I think, probably, if anything, more mainstream, maybe even consensus. So we've seen a lot of comments from, titans of traditional finance like Larry Fink at BlackRock. They're expecting markets to kind of evolve in this direction. And my view is I kind of view this as like three parts of a puzzle. There's three things that need to develop for security tokens to kind of hit their potential. The first one is technology, and I think this is what's going to pull in the institutional players and more mainstream issuers, right? We have significant advantages in terms of technology. We can offer things like real-time settlement, 24/7, 365 trading, global liquidity. And then specifically on the security side, using things like Blockstream's Liquid network, we can set up transaction-restricted assets. So you create a whitelisted ecosystem. Investors can take their securities off of a platform, self-custody them. And then you could ping them over to another exchange to do arbitrage. And within that whitelisted ecosystem, you could even, ping back and forth with other whitelisted counterparties, with individuals. The second part of that puzzle is investable assets. And I'm happy to say that that's matured a lot over the last 12 months. So actually, this is one of the great things about the AIFC. I see many familiar faces in the audience and people that we're working with to kind of develop new opportunities. And the opportunities for deal origination, I think in the AIFC and Central Asia more broadly is just immense. And I think it's kind of been one of these regions that's been a little bit overlooked by traditional capital markets, and that's something we're trying to help on. Now, getting back to answering your question, the third part has been the slowest to develop, and maybe that's the most important part, and that's commercially viable regulatory oversight. I think this opportunity is just naturally skewed towards small to mid-size economies. And the reason for that is there's so much more upside and relatively little downside. So at the presentation this morning, I was speaking with Nurhat, the CEO of AFSA, and he told me that probably financial services are less than 5% of the Kazakh economy, right? And it was mentioned that Singapore is maybe around 20%. So for Singapore, the upside is kind of limited, and there's a lot of risk and a lot of downside. They've got strong financial players, and I think a lot of these other major financial centers are this way as well. For the AIFC, for the El Salvador, it's relatively little downside and quite a bit of upside. So I think, and major financial centers just naturally already have this leading position within capital markets, and there's a lot of pushback from very powerful incumbents. So that's the opportunity for small to mid-sized economies, and my kind of view is that I think this is really an opportunity for places like the AIFC and El Salvador to close the gap with traditional financial markets, right? So it's difficult for the AIFC or El Salvador to compete with, pick a London, Tokyo, New York. But if you come at this asymmetrically, you embrace this new technology rather than digging in your heels, then I think it's realistic to close the gap. And the focus for me is not maybe integrating into traditional financial centers, it's about creating new financial centers.
I heard your message, and it's definitely a good message here locally for Astana. Amjad, let me come to you. And having Sopnendo's stack in mind, in your position, but also with your background, you're definitely ticking off the second of his stack. In terms of money laundering or anti-money laundering and then so on. What is Binance doing, and what is the position of Binance in that discussion?
Thank you, Johan. And just to reiterate what Jesse was just saying, crypto could be the great equalizer. The blockchain should be and can be the great equalizer. These traditional large financial markets that have controlled things don't need to continue to dominate the market. Smaller markets now can have a say, they can have an influence, they can have a seat at the table, and we really think crypto is a way of doing that. Back to regulations, just to back up regarding MiCA and VARA and UAB. For for the centralized exchanges, mass adoption is our goal. And to achieve mass adoption, we need trust. And for trust, we need regulatory frameworks that work. So when regulators are out there saying, and these are, that crypto is gambling, that crypto is a house of cards, that crypto has no value, that's not helping the market. That's not helping crypto. That's not helping investors. That's not helping individuals. So we look at this as a partnership. What the regulators are trying to achieve is, we think, 90% in line with what the centralized exchanges are trying to achieve. We want safety and stability in the market. We don't want money laundering, terrorism financing. We want good know your customer rules. We want to be able to identify illegal proceeds if they come in or out of our exchange. We want that. That's good for the centralized exchanges. It's good for the regulators, it's good for the investors, it's good for the individuals. So we are looking for regulators such as here that are open-minded, that want to work together to build a framework that can gather trust of the investors, protect the investor funds, but then be able to leverage and pivot quickly to allow innovation and continuous growth in the ecosystem. We can't keep taking a round peg and trying to put it into a square hole anymore. Innovation is moving forward. The genie is out of the bottle. There's no putting it back. Some regulators, and as I'm sure of you, a lot of you that are interested in crypto have heard this week, many regulators are taking a stance that all crypto is bad, all crypto exchanges are bad, we're going to take actions against everybody, we're going to protect investors by killing the industry. How do you protect investors by killing an industry? How do you put a genie back into the bottle? Let's work together. We want solid controls in place, but they have to be reasonable, and they have to be able to allow innovation and growth. Here at Binance, we work closely with law enforcement, have submitted thousands of requests and cooperations, conduct trainings around the world for law enforcement and regulators. We do it free of charge, and we do it proactively because we want the market and the industry and the ecosystem to be safe. That's in our best interests. So let's get where our two interests align, which is across the board when it comes to anti-money laundering, anti-terrorism financing, fraud prevention. We align with what the regulators say that they want and they're aligned with. Let's work together for sensible regulation that can promote safety for investors and yet allow the industry to continue to grow.
Thank you very much. I've heard your message. I hope it will fall onto fertile ground in DC. Ben, what do you think?
My thoughts on the overall topic?
On regulation?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I agree both sides. Of course, initially, about the stack, right? I think as an industry, first of all, I think overall blockchain and crypto is becoming regulated. We're not talking about gambling, it's a regulated market. So with any regulated market, there should be a know your customer and the whole stack, right? I think we should separate the two aspects of crypto. One is the gambling kind of type where the speculation happens. And you have also the other side where mass adoption is happening. If you look at Brazil, Argentina, and all these countries where their traditional finance system is not established or their own fiat is not happening so well. So I think to kind of answer the question why people come into crypto, my instinct answer is because traditional finance is failing a bit. especially in countries where the own fiat is not doing so well. A lot of people adopt crypto as a way for more financial independence and more financial freedom, I guess. But at the same time, crypto have the gambling part where the price speculation and all that. I think that part we completely agree. As industry actors, we should all act on it. I'm glad I'd never put my face on a bus, but we completely agree with that part. But if we go back to the question, why do people come to crypto? It's not because they trust crypto, it's because they lose trust in the traditional system. And also, if you compare the same time frame, the money lost in crypto versus traditional sector, probably a lot more in traditional sector. If you compare the bad actors in crypto and in traditional, Bernie Bernoff is an even worse bad actor. So I think if we put crypto in the same level field, and this me as the industry participant is asking, let's be valued exactly same on the same level field. We don't want to be constantly labeled as someone trying to escape the law and trying to act in a very kind of unconventional ways. So on top of that, and this is why Bybit is working with Vera, we're working closely with Astana Financial Services. We actually just got the in-principle approvals. We are on the application list for MES. We also have so we global work with all the regulators. But you start to see differences between regulators. You have regulators that are extremely aggressive, that you kind of get the message they are actually trying to not let you go there. A typical example is Canada. Recently, I think all of the participants exit Canada. We had very good communication with Canada before. In the recent months, they developed telling us a certain product you cannot even have stable coins. So all the pairs has to be BTC nominated or Ethereum nominated. And this causes a majority of participants exit the market. And where you have another regulator who's, I think the latest one is Hong Kong, where everyone got extremely excited and trying to go there. And so you have very two approaches, right? As market participants, we would love to work with anyone that can give us very clear guidance on the pipelines, and we were trying to regulate it wherever there is established framework. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And as promised, I want to open the floor for a single question. Hopefully we can have more questions later. There's one. I don't know whether we have a microphone here. For the lady, please, when the microphone coming, say your name, and also let us know who should answer that question from the fellow panelists.
Thank you. I'm Flora Huang. I'm a law professor in the UK. I'm also the EU the arbitrator in the trade and investment. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this week I think that everyone should know that in the cryptocurrency we have a really big event. Not called event, the incident. It's the SEC that just sued the Binance. Sorry about that. And Binance. And also the SEC, the call the Binance is the web of deception. So I don't want to target any the specific company or the cryptocurrency exchange. I just want to hear your thoughts on this, what kind of impact or the incident. And also because in this week you could see that the stocks or all the cryptocurrency, the stock price went down. I'm also the one investor. And how to reboost investor confidence in the cryptocurrency. Thank you.
For whom is that question, Amjad?
I don't mind.
Okay, who wants to answer? Amjad, I'm not sure whether you want to comment on the SEC, but up to you.
No comment on the SEC. I think the market spoke. The market spoke loudly with how it responded today. And I think investors and users are speaking loudly. And if every single cryptocurrency exchange is getting sued, maybe something's going on wrong with beyond. It's not one exchange's problem. It's a much bigger problem when everybody is doing everything wrong. Maybe the person looking at it is doing the thing wrong. But things like that are very hurtful to investor confidence. They create FUD in the industry, and it takes months, years to then rebuild the trust of investors. We take our investors as our users are our most important asset. They're our most important partner. Their trust is utmost importance to us. There is no line that we will ever cross that can take away the trust of the investors. So trusting us with your funds, custodying the funds, showing proof of reserves of the funds, not lending out funds, not using your funds for our own trading is solid lines that can't be crossed. These are things that go well beyond crypto. This is, if you go back to FTX, FTX was not a crypto crime. It was not a cryptocurrency exchange failure. It was a fraudulent crime. It was a fraud failure. Somebody took somebody else's assets and used it for their own personal good. Madoff was brought up a little earlier. These are exactly the same two things. How long did the investment industry take to recoup from Madoff? It takes a long time, and now we think the exchanges, the regulated exchanges, the exchanges that want safety and growth of the ecosystem, now we have a duty to rebuild the trust with the users, and we will do everything that we can to continue to build the trust with users.
Thank you very much. Rosa, Sain, I want to bring you back into our discussion. So my question to you, and Rosa, maybe you want to go first, is where do the regulation has to improve? And also, what needs to be regulated and what should not be regulated? And perhaps maybe also comment on decentralized finance.
Well, that's a very broad set of questions, but let me just try to answer briefly, given that I'm given 3 minutes on what I think is needed in terms of regulation. So there is always a balance between innovation, competition, and regulation. And this is what the authorities need to look in Kazakhstan and elsewhere. How do we allow for a competitive market that fosters innovation and at the same time enhances credibility via regulation? Because it is true that the last months have tarnished the image of crypto markets. The Luna Terra episode in May 2022, the FTX scandal, even if it is truly was fraud in November, the truth of the matter is that they have tarnished the image. And we need to go back. I'm a professor of law, so I focus more on the regulatory aspects rather than on the technology aspects. We need to go back to the traditional arguments for regulating markets, which have to do with market failures or market deficiencies. And in finance, very clearly, we have information asymmetries and externalities. And particularly when it comes to externalities, we have the very damaging risk of contagion when trust is lost in a market, whether rationally or irrationally. So what do we need? So in the light of rapidly evolving technology and the global and decentralized nature of finance, we still need classic things. We need to protect investors. Investors require protection if things go wrong in particular. We need to have transparent, fair and efficient markets. That's one of the traditional arguments for regulating finance. And we also need something which perhaps is an argument that has been emphasized by regulatory authorities and central banks around the world after the global financial crisis, which is we need to protect financial stability.
Rosa, I would like to give a few seconds to Sain to also comment. Sain, do you agree? I think we lost him. Anyway, we are approaching the end of our discussion, unfortunately. I have the feeling we could continue for at least half an hour more.
just want to say
Can I
because
just say one more thing? Sorry,
So-
can I just say one more thing? I was just going to say that in the EU, in addition to MiCA, there are two other pieces of legislation which this audience may find very interesting. One is what is called DORA, which is a whole digital finance strategy, which is a Digital Operational Resilience Act. And the other is a new proposal of the Parliament and the Council on information that should accompany the transfer of funds and certain crypto assets with regard to anti-money laundering and terrorist financing. So I think these two pieces of legislation are very important for any investor in crypto assets. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So
And you get the closing remark.
No, I just want to, before we leave this room, understand why we need crypto. The original intent of crypto is to bring two things together. The act of ownership of an asset and the transfer of value into a single token. That's the original purpose of crypto. We should not forget that as a market product, because if you don't solve that, you are not solving financial inclusion challenges. You are not solving the Satoshi's promise of a better payment system. You are not solving the capital market infrastructure, where a smart contract is embedded with a digital currency and making the intermediary roles irrelevant. So do not forget the original intent of crypto, because till now, other than institutional side, on the retail side, that promise has not been delivered.
Thank you very much. This is a perfect wrap-up of our session. Please join me giving a big round of applause for my fellow panelists. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the conference.